My name is Alina, and this is the story of the day silence finally spoke louder than gossip ever could. The valet didn't even blink as I handed him the keys to my matte black Lamborghini. Maybe he'd seen bigger, flashier cars roll through this luxury venue. Maybe not. But for me, this wasn't about flash. It was about finally stepping out of the shadow I had let myself shrink into for too long. I adjusted the hem of my deep emerald dress as I stepped onto the marble walkway, each click of my heels echoing like a quiet announcement. Not loud, not desperate, just steady, purposeful. Around me, heads turned. Some gasped, others stared without hiding it. And then there was her, my sister, the bride. Standing beneath a silk archway, laughing mid-sentence before she saw me. Her smile faltered, only for a second. But I caught it. I kept walking. Past relatives who had pitied me, past friends who had checked in when the rumors started. I didn't stop to explain. I didn't need to, because the story they believed, the one she told, was already unraveling with every step I took. The whispers started behind me like a quiet wave. Is that... she bought that? I thought she was broke. She told everyone I was broke, so I let her believe it. I let them believe it until today. But this isn't a revenge story. Not exactly. This is what happens when the quiet one stops playing. Small. When the one who stayed silent finally decides to show up, without raising her voice, without clapping back, without explaining herself, just showing up, in full. Because sometimes the most powerful response isn't what you say, it's what you become. There was a time when my sister and I were inseparable. As little girls, we used to share a room, whisper secrets under the covers, and plan who we'd marry and where we'd live when we grew up. She always wanted the spotlight, and I was content behind the curtain. That dynamic stayed with us, only it stopped being sweet somewhere along the way. By the time we were in our 20s, things had shifted. The bond was still there, but it came with strings. Strings I didn't realize she was pulling until much later. In our family, appearance was everything. My parents weren't cruel, just traditional. My sister fit into that tradition perfectly, always polished, always performing. She knew how to make people love her in 10 seconds flat. And I? I was the quiet one, the one who reads in corners, the one who didn't need attention, and because of that, rarely got it. I don't think my parents meant to overlook me. But when your child doesn't demand space, it's easy to forget she still needs it. My sister became the golden child without even trying. Every dress she wore, every boyfriend she brought home, every job she applied to, it was praised, celebrated, admired. And when I got into university on a full scholarship, a quiet nod. When I started building my own business from my cramped apartment, barely a question, but I never complained. I told myself I didn't need validation. I told myself that being underestimated was a kind of power, because no one sees you coming when they've already written you off. While my sister posted selfies from brunches and vacations, I spent nights buried in spreadsheets and strategy. I built something from nothing, brick by brick. No loans, no handouts, no fanfare. And when it finally took off, when my company turned profitable and stable, I didn't upgrade my life. I stayed in the same apartment. I kept driving my beat-up Corolla. I wore simple clothes, skipped the designer labels, and blended in with the background. To my sister, it looked like failure. She never said it directly, but she didn't have to. The way she sighed when I showed up to dinner in flats instead of heels. The way she once told her friend, loud enough for me to hear, I wish Alina would just live a little. She works so hard, but for what? She thought I was boring, or poor, or both. I never corrected her. It wasn't because I lacked pride. It was because I'd learned over time that people only believe what they want to believe. And the more you try to explain yourself, the more they twist your words to suit their version of you. So I let her talk. I let her mock my clothes, my old car, my lack of Instagram-worthy vacations. I let her dismiss my life as small, because I knew the size of it couldn't be seen from the outside. Sometimes people only respect things they can measure in likes and labels. But I stayed quiet. Not because I was afraid. Not because I didn't have receipts, but because I was saving my voice for something that would be worth the silence. And deep down, I think I always knew. One day, she would push too far. One day, the narrative would go from teasing to tarnishing. One day, she'd stop laughing at me and start laughing at me, in public. And when that day came, I wouldn't yell, I wouldn't defend, I'd simply arrive. It happened over dinner. A big family gathering. One of those casual Sunday night things that somehow feel like performance theater when everyone's watching everyone else. My sister was glowing that evening, draped in something designer and loud enough to draw attention, without seeming like she tried. That was always her gift, making effort look effortless. I'd come straight from a client pitch meeting. My hair was still in a loose bun, my blouse wrinkled from the drive. I didn't bother changing or putting on makeup. I never did for family. I thought I didn't have to. That was my mistake. We were all seated at the dinner table, our parents, a few cousins, some extended relatives I barely remembered, and a couple of my sister's friends. She was telling a story, laughing, gesturing, like she always did. Then, mid-sentence, she turned toward me and said, "I mean, come on. Alina still drives that little car from college. She's so committed to her aesthetic, right? Struggling artist chic? Or is it broke entrepreneur energy now?" Laughter. Not the light kind. The sharp kind that people try to stifle but don't try hard enough. Someone murmured, "Oh my God," through their grin. Another person actually clapped. I didn't even know who. My ears buzzed too loudly to track it. I smiled. That's what I did. I smiled, took a sip of water, and said nothing. Even though the blood had drained from my face. Even though I could feel the prickle behind my eyes and the slow, deliberate pounding in my chest. It wasn't the joke. It was the comfort. The casualness. The ease with which she said it. As if my life was nothing more than a punchline for her spotlight. I didn't confront her that night. I didn't storm out or cry in the bathroom. I finished dinner. I helped clear plates. I hugged. Everyone goodbye like nothing had cracked beneath my ribs, but something had. Later that week, a cousin I hadn't heard from in years called me out of the blue. "Hey," she said gently, "I know things have been tough. I just wanted you to know that if you need anything, money, a place to crash, whatever, I'm here, okay?" I blinked. "Sorry?" I asked. She hesitated. "I heard you were going through it, that your business tanked, that you're living paycheck to paycheck." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how long it had been going on. How many people had quietly pitied me? How many had whispered, "Poor Alina," after hanging up the phone? How many assumptions had been made because I didn't correct the lie the first time it slipped out of her mouth? When I finally pulled the thread, I discovered everything. She'd been telling people I was struggling, that my startup had flopped, that I was too proud to ask for help, too stubborn to admit I'd failed. She told one friend I was sleeping on a friend's couch, told another I was looking for handouts. None of it was true, not even close. My business was thriving, quietly, steadily. I'd never missed a rent payment. I had savings, investments, plans. But none of that mattered, did it? Not if people believed the lie more easily than the truth. It hit me like a slow-moving train. I had allowed her to build a version of me that didn't exist. I'd stayed silent for so long that she'd assumed I'd never speak, and maybe she was right. Maybe I wouldn't speak. But I didn't have to. not with words, because some stories write themselves in the presence. That night, I sat at my desk, opened a blank document, and wrote 2 lists, one titled Who I Am, the other, Who They Think I Am. I stared at them for a long time, and then I made a decision. I wouldn't defend myself. I wouldn't send mass texts or correct the narrative one person at a time. I wouldn't call her out or fight fire with fire. No, I would show up, once, fully, and let everything she'd built crumble under the weight of one undeniable truth. I was never broke. I was just quiet. And that quiet? It was about to become the loudest thing in the room. I think part of me always knew this moment would come. Not the Lamborghini, not the wedding, not the whispers behind champagne glasses, but the quiet reckoning. The shift. The breaking of something that had been too neatly held together for too long, and maybe it all started in 5th grade. We had a school project, poster board and colored markers, charts, and facts about the solar system. I worked on it for days. Cut every piece of construction paper by hand, drew Saturn's rings with a compass, and even glued tiny specks of glitter to mimic stars. The night before it was due, my sister walked into my room. "Yours looks better than mine," she said, picking it up, eyes scanning every corner. I shrugged. I was proud of it, but not the showy kind. The next morning, we both waited at the front door with our projects in hand. But when Mom came downstairs, she looked right at her board, my board, and smiled. "Wow, look at that. Sarah, this is beautiful. You've really outdone yourself." I opened my mouth to say something. Then I closed it. I remember staring at my own project, mine, not hers, in her arms. And I remember thinking, if I speak up, I ruin the moment. If I stay quiet, I disappear. I disappeared. She got a gold star that day. The teacher beamed at her. Mom hugged her tight when she got home. I kept my mouth shut. That was the day I learned that being right isn't always enough. Sometimes being right just makes you the target. But being calm while right? That lingers. That settles into the air and waits for the right moment to rise. The years went on, and I became really good at fading. I never told anyone that I helped cover her tuition when she ran out of savings sophomore year. I'd quietly wired the money, anonymous and uncredited. She had cried on the phone with Mom that night, saying a miracle happened, that her friend's dad must have pulled some strings. She didn't even ask. She just assumed the world had once again tilted in her favor, and I let her believe that, because what mattered was that she stayed in school, not who paid for it. There were dozens of little moments like that, where I could have spoken, but didn't. Could have claimed, but passed. Not because I didn't care, but because I thought strength looked like self-sacrifice, like silence, like letting others shine while you quietly hold the spotlight steady for them. But silence only works when the people you love don't weaponize it. She did. She turned my stillness into weakness, my humility into shame, my patience turned into something pitiful. And now, for the first time, I wasn't going to let her. Not by screaming. Not by arguing, but by showing up. Fully. Letting the silence stand beside me instead of hiding behind me. Because I am done disappearing. The moment my car door clicked shut, the sound seemed to echo across the entire courtyard. A matte black Lamborghini wasn't meant to blend in. And I didn't want it to. Heads turned. Conversation slowed. I walked slowly, heels sinking just slightly into the stone path beneath the wedding arch. The soft murmur of live violin music filled the air. Elegant, sweet, almost ironic. The venue was stunning, I'll admit. My sister had spared no expense. Cascading white flowers, crystal chandeliers suspended from trees, everything curated for perfection. For appearances. I smoothed the folds of my deep emerald gown and kept my sunglasses on as I moved past the rows of stunned faces. People who had, just weeks ago, pitied me. People who had believed her. And then, there she was, standing beneath the archway with her new husband by her side, bouquet in hand, still glowing from the ceremony. For a brief second, her smile held. Then her eyes locked on mine. It dropped. The expression, I mean. Just for a second. That brief, involuntary flicker of confusion, turning into something brittle and nervous. Her lips curled again into a tight smile, but the shine was gone. She broke away from the crowd and approached me, arms outstretched, voice pitched just a bit too high. "Alina, wow. You clean up well." Her tone was light. It always was when she was trying to mask the heat rising under her skin. I smiled. Calm, steady, measured. "Thanks," I said softly. "Just thought I'd dress for the occasion." She blinked. There was a flicker in her eyes. That searching look, like she was trying to make sense of something that didn't fit her version of the story anymore. Behind her, I caught the face of a cousin. The same one who had offered me help, unprompted, weeks before. Her brows furrowed, lips slightly parted. She wasn't whispering yet, but the thoughts were swirling. I didn't say much the entire evening. I mingled. I smiled. I hugged relatives and accepted champagne. But I didn't explain anything. Not the dress, not the car, not the sudden shimmer of confidence they weren't used to seeing on me, because I didn't come here to defend myself. I came here to exist, fully, unapologetically, and that was enough. I caught the moment her friend, the one who had once dated, me before slipping into my sister's social circle, turned his head. The way his eyes lingered, he leaned in and whispered something to someone beside him. Let them wonder. Let them rethink everything they'd whispered behind closed doors. Let them reconstruct every story they thought they understood about who I was. Toward the end of the night, when the cake had been cut and the first dance had passed, I made my way to the gift table. I placed a small white box, no bow, no embellishment, directly beside their silver-plated card chest. Inside was a check, the exact amount I'd once wired her in secret. The same amount she never asked for. The same money that kept her enrolled, kept her pride intact, kept her world spinning when it nearly collapsed. No one ever knew. Until now. I'd written a short note on cream paper, folded inside the envelope. "You once said I never give enough. So here's your last gift, from the broke sister." That was it. I didn't stick around to see her open it. I didn't wait for the reaction, or the explanations, or the inevitable spin she'd try to put on it. I left, just as quietly as I arrived. The valet pulled the car up, eyes wide, nodding with the kind of quiet respect you can't fake. I slipped into the seat, closed the door gently, and pulled away from the lights, the music, the curated fantasy. No drama, no fight, no shouting match under the fairy lights. Just a quiet, undeniable shift in the air. She had told everyone I was broke, and now they all knew the truth. Not because I said it, but because I didn't have to. That's the thing about silence. If you hold it long enough and fill it with strength, it becomes the loudest voice in the room. The drive home from the wedding was quiet. No music. No thoughts I hadn't already lived through 100 times in my head. Just the sound of the engine beneath me and the soft rhythm of tires on asphalt. I wasn't angry. I wasn't proud. I wasn't even particularly satisfied. I was clear. That night wasn't about revenge. That car, the dress, the silence. None of it was meant to humiliate her. It was a boundary. A line drawn not in sand, but in presence, in dignity, in choice. For years, I'd let her voice define how others saw me. I'd let her need to shine push me further into the shadows. Not because I lacked light, but because I thought dimming myself made the room more comfortable. But I know now. Shrinking yourself so others can stretch does no one any favors. After the wedding, the whispers died down. Some people tried to backpedal, reaching out with faux concern or casual curiosity, as if they hadn't once believed the worst of me without question. I didn't respond to most of them, not out of bitterness, but out of peace. Peace doesn't explain itself. It doesn't chase clarity from those who never looked for it in the first place. My business continued to thrive, not because I suddenly proved them wrong, but because I'd been building something strong and stable long before anyone bothered to look. But something did shift. I stopped hiding, not to be noticed, but to be balanced. I bought clothes I loved instead of clothes that made me invisible. I upgraded my car, not for the emblem on the hood, but for the ease of the ride. I started sharing parts of my life more openly, the meaningful ones, the hard-earned ones, not to impress, to exist. There's a strange freedom in realizing you never needed to prove anything. You just needed to stop letting people confuse your silence for weakness. And as for my sister, we don't talk much now, not out of malice. But because I finally stopped holding space for someone who only saw me clearly when I became useful or silent. I wish her well, truly, because that's the final piece of peace, letting go without needing the last word. I didn't pull up to that wedding to shame her. I didn't go to make a scene or to rewrite the gossip in real time. I pulled up because I needed to remind myself of something I had forgotten. I was never invisible. I just chose the wrong mirrors.